only show that's 3 dimensions away from Renfield crossover Bram Stoker's Dracula and being called Bram Stoker's Renfield and Dracula. I'm your host 3D Jake, and today we're looking at Renfield, released in 2023. Renfield is directed by Chris McKay, who you might know directed the Lego Batman movie, and he also directed the Tomorrow Wars. This movie is essentially focused on Renfield's assistant, kind of like how in the movie Victor Frankenstein, how it's focused on Igor, but it's not the Igor, even though it's not called Igor, it's just called Victor Frankenstein because there's already a cartoon called Igor. So they basically, it's kind of like that, where except I would say this is better than Victor Frankenstein. This movie is essentially about, Renfield, played by Nicholas Hoult, who basically has been his Dracula's servant. I forgot there's a term for it. And so he's basically his servant, and he's been through him throughout the years. And so basically Nicolas Cage he's basically his, as Aquafina would call it, his Uber Eats delivery guy, basically. And so basically he's been there, and basically he's taking care of him. Sorry about the weather. I know it's raining hard outside. But yeah, he's been there doing all this stuff for Renfield and all these out throughout the years. And so basically Renfield's probably tired of killing people for him and all that stuff. And he also, if he eats flies, gets superpowers, and he can always kill bad guys. And he tries to kill only bad guys, but sometimes it gets out of hand and he ends up killing, other types of people that are on the line of good and evil. The movie stars Nicolas Cage as Dracula, Nicholas Hoult as Renfield, Aquafina, and Ben Schwartz. The movie is essentially what I told you about Renfield. And the movie, I will say, I went into this thing as going to be like a comedy, but it's kind of like What You Do in the Shadows, but more gory. In a way, like, Nicolas Cage is one of the best parts of this movie. I love Nicolas Cage. He is so good. What I like about the movie is he is great. Nicolas Cage is just like that when it comes to the movie. Nicolas Cage is so great as Dracula, and I love how it has footage. Like, it literally is, like, Nicolas Cage just embodies, like, more like Christopher Lee than Bela Lugosi, but he's still really good in this movie. Like, Nicolas Cage is so great. Like, I wish the whole movie was about him instead it's about Renfield. And I really wish they had more of Nicolas Cage. Like, if the whole movie would have just been about Nicolas Cage Dracula with Renfield in it, I would have been fine with that. But instead, it's more about Renfield, and he's more of like a guest star in this movie. And that's what I really hated about it, because it's like, I don't care about the mob shit. I just want to see Nicolas Cage as Dracula and Renfield. There was one element that I really liked about the movie, and I'm going to talk about that in a second. But I did like the 1932 or the 1930s Dracula flashback where they recreated the scene because it's Universal. So they went to the Universal Monsters movies, Dracula, Bela Lugosi, and they just like CGI Nicolas Cage, or they might reshot it with Nicolas Cage and Nicholas Hoult in there, and so there's just a bunch of scenes with them, and except they just retconned the ending, and then they put, they went off and did all this other crazy shit and stuff. So I really like that they paid homage to Bela Lugosi's Dracula. That was really well done. I really enjoyed that element of this movie. I also liked, the Flash. The Flash was great. I also like the violence. The gore is just amazing. The violence and gore of this movie. That to me I thought was great. I really liked that. I just thought that was fantastic. Like, just every time you see blood and gore, and just Nicolas Cage's blood just dancing, like, that's so good. I love that element. And I also like Renfield killing bad guys and bringing him back to Dracula so he could feed off of. Like, he's just basically like a vigilante that goes around killing bad guys, like drug dealers and stuff. And, for the mob bosses and mob henchmen. And just goes and brings them back so Dracula can eat. And he's like, Dracula doesn't like that. And he's like, I want to eat young stuff like cheerleaders, nuns. The cheerleader's not sexual, by the way. That's what he says. It's like, not in a sexual way. I just want to point that out. Just I was hungry. And so, I did also like this one other thing I really liked was the bad guys teaming up with Dracula. I kind of wish that would have been more bigger. It feels like that happened more at the end, and I wanted to see more of that. Like, I feel like that was like a little small side piece. I kind of wish we would have got that a bigger piece, like Dracula running like the mob. That would have been cool. I thought that would have been awesome. And Nicolas Cage, there's Nicolas Cage has a Cage moment where he yells out, "Hell!" Like he says, "I'll see you in hell." Like, oh my god, Nicolas Cage, when he cages out, that is the funniest thing ever. I want that every time I watch it. I'm like, please, Nicolas Cage, give me more of that, okay? Like, that's what I'm like, I thought this would be like, this is actually better than Vampire Kiss. I thought this would be like another Vampire Kiss, but it's not, and I really like that. That it's more like, it is a good, actual good movie, but it just like has those cheesy moments that I love. You know, and also Nicolas Cage's prosthetics. Like, he's very, there's a couple times where I couldn't look at the screen and like, how he just looks gory and gross, and then until he starts drinking blood and gets back up. You know, again, I apologize for the blood. And also, what I really liked about it was Nicolas Cage is great as Dracula. Nicolas Cage is fantastic as Dracula. I think he's great. He resembles the Bela Lugosi, and I also really like the 1930s flashback scene that is pays tribute to Bela Lugosi. Nicolas Cage is, you know, like they just basically photoshopped or photo mapped inside Nicolas Cage in there with, you know, him and Nicholas Hoult. So that way, by the way, both their names are Nicholas. Did you know that? That's weird. I saw that when I said, because they're both Nick and Nick, and they were both doing promotion with Nick and Nick cups. And so I do like that. And really, they have a great chemistry between the two. Nicolas Cage is great. It kind of reminded me of Christopher Lee's Dracula in the Hammer films, and that's what he said he was inspired by. And so I really like Nicolas Cage. He's great as Dracula. I just kind of wish there was more of him. You know, and the 1930s flashback scene was fantastic. I really like that they just used old footage from the Universal Monsters movie of Dracula, starring Bela Lugosi, and they just put Nicolas Cage and Nicholas Hoult in there. I thought that was great. And, you know, the flashback scene was great. And then the violence. Oh, the violence is so grotesque. It's like Walking Dead violence. There's just like blood and guts everywhere. I mean, that's what made me so happy about it. You know, and I also really like Nicolas Cage prosthetics. You know, I've said that before, but yeah, he looks great in that. And Renfield killing bad guys and bringing them to Dracula, that is so great. I love it. I thought that was great. You know, like, you know, he's just eating this flesh. It's like almost like it's almost like a superhero film if you think about it, because you got a good guy, because he gets superpowers when he eats bugs, and so then of course you have like this good guy who was sired by, you know, Dracula, and has to defeat his old master. I mean, it's almost like Dragon Ball Z, or it's almost like a superhero film in a way. I mean, it's like a bloodier R-rated comic film if you think about it. And I also really like, you know, I really like, you know, Dracula yelling at the end when he's like, I'll see you in hell! Like, you know, wow, just Nicolas Cage caging out is the best thing ever. I love when I can watch a Nicolas Cage film and have him cage out anytime. That is what I love about Nicolas Cage. He just goes for it. You know, he swings for the fences and he always wins. You know, and I also see the biggest complaints in this movie is that, you know, and I heard John Flickinger talk about this. I've heard, you know, Jeremy Jahns talk about this. It feels like there are two different movies. It feels like there's a mob story and then there's a Dracula and Renfield story. It feels like Dracula Renfield story is too short, so they had to mash the two together to make a full-length movie. And I agree, because it does feel like, okay, you got the cliche cop that's dad was murdered, and so she's going to turn to drugs and crime and become a dirty cop. And so she has to team up, and then. But I will say, I do like the fact that there was mob bosses getting killed by Renfield and Dracula. I thought that was pretty cool. You know, and I thought the film was too short. You know, I always felt like, I mean, I think it could have been a good 2 hours. It could, because I just feel like it was too short. You know, and it's very similar also to What We Do in the Shadows cinematography wise. And also, I just feel like, you know, there's not enough Dracula in this movie. And it's like, you know, we don't get enough time between them two. We just get the flashback, and then after Dracula, Renfield's like, oh, fuck you, Dracula, and goes off and does like a thing. I do like the self-help group where he goes and just starts putting like inspirational pictures, and then Dracula shows up and he gets pissed off because Renfield's out there saving it like a vigilante, and basically goes and kills the self-help group. Also, he tries to gaslight Renfield by saying, like blaming him for Dracula being the way he is. I mean, that's just, I thought that was great. You know, when every time the two are together, it's fantastic. Especially his prosthetics. It's really good. And also, I just had an issue, you know, with Ben Schwartz. Ben Schwartz is really, I just feel like he plays almost like a goofy character. Like, I like him as an actor. I think he's really funny. I liked him, he's really funny in this, but I kind of feel like he's not a mob boss. I don't believe he's a mob boss. And he's like the low lieutenant that's a rat in the movie that gets killed early on in the mob story, if this was a real mob story. You know? Ben Schwartz, because I mean, he's doing so much shit to where they would just ice him, because there's like, he's more of a liability than he is contributing to anything, you know. And I just feel like, you know, I feel almost like it parodies the John Wick son in a way, where like in the son in John Wick, the mob son in John Wick, where he kills the dog. I feel like it parodies that, because at least he was actually a son that, I believe he's a mob boss son. Not Ben Schwartz. I believe he's just a goon, like a rat goon that gets killed early on. And also, this is, I don't know if this, I've been going back and forth whether this is good or bad, but there is a love story. There's not a love story, but there is like a connection. They have chemistry. Aquafina and, you know, Nicholas Hoult. I feel like but they never kiss or embrace or nothing. So I guess they're just good friends. I mean, maybe because I was thinking, well, how come they don't kiss? Usually that's the cliche love thing, but they don't. And I'm like, well, that's fine. I was really fine with that, because that's so overly done, in movies. Like every movie, even Black Adam has a love interest. I'm like, come on. So I thought that was pretty good that they did that. Also, because I'm like, maybe Dracula and him are lovers, because that has been done in history of books and of the lore. So possibly that. I'm not saying that has happened in the movie, but I'm saying in the movie it could just be master and apprentice, like in Star Wars. But I wouldn't be shocked if they were. But they so far from what I'm reading into it, no, they're not. But it could be. But I do think they are really good, close. They could easily kiss, and I would believe it. Like there are some love connections that don't work, but I do believe this works, and that I think that was pretty good, and I do think that this movie should have been focused more on Dracula and less on Renfield and the mob stuff, but I did enjoy it. It's better than Vampire's Kiss, obviously, but I do think it's a great film. If you haven't seen it, I think it's for rental. I don't know if it's on Peacock yet. If I had to give this movie a grade, I would give it a solid B+.
When something crazy happens and someone's like, it's okay, I've seen way worse. Everything I saw you do today is gonna be my way worse.
It's my least favorite part of the job.